Hi, my name is Charis Yip, and this is the London International Model United Nations Rules of Procedure tutorial video. So to begin, who are your directors and your assistant directors? These are your committee dais. So what is their general authority? The dais has complete control over the proceedings of the committee and over the maintenance of order during all its sessions. So let's start. The dais can declare a session open and permit debate when at least 1/3 of the committee's member states are present. At the commencement of each committee session, the dais will call on member states in English alphabetical order to confirm their status of attendance. So this is called the roll call. Member states have two options when voting for this, saying present or present and voting. Present means the member state is present, and present and voting means the member state cannot abstain on the substantive vote, which includes the final vote on a resolution. Just to clarify, there are two types of voting that can happen. First, there's procedural voting. This is when delegates must vote for or against any procedural vote and where abstentions are not in order. On the other hand, there's substantive voting. This is when delegates are allowed to vote either yes, no, or abstain. In this case, it mostly happens during the time when you're passing a draft resolution or any amendments. And during this time, any person who had voted at the beginning in the roll call present and voting cannot abstain. So now the debate has opened. The first thing that will happen is the setting of the agenda. So the first order of business for the committee is the consideration of the order in which the agenda item shall be discussed. So a motion should be made to put an agenda first. So this requires a second. And in that case, if there are no objections, the motion shall be considered as automatically adopted by the committee. So this could be topic A or topic B. And if topic A has been decided upon, then that means topic A will be in discussion first. If there are seconds and objections, then that means a speakers list will be established to discuss the motion. So this will be up to a procedural vote for speakers. The number of speakers for each side is unlimited as long as there's an equal number of speakers for and against each side. These speakers may not yield except to the chair. So as an exception to the general procedural vote of speakers, debate on the motion must be closed through a motion to close the debate. After at least 2 speakers for each side have been heard or the speakers list has been exhausted, a motion to close debate is in order. The motion will immediately be voted on in as procedural without speakers. In the case of which the motion to put an agenda first, so let's say topic A over topic B fails, then the other agenda item will automatically be placed first on the agenda. Great, so the agenda has been set. So after that, a continuously open speakers list will be established for the purpose of general debate. This will be called the speakers list. The dais shall ask the committee for those who wish to be added to the speakers list when it is first open, and ask again from time to time throughout the entire committee session. They'll keep a written copy of the order of the speakers, and any delegates who wish to be added to the speakers list after that can do so by writing a note to the dais or by raising their placards when asked to do so. So when a delegate is granted the right to speak during the general speakers list, he or she has the ability to yield the time remaining at the end of their speech. And this can happen in 3 ways. So first, it's yielding to another delegate. This means giving the remaining time to another delegate for them to have the opportunity to speak. The second one is yielding to points of information. So the delegate is opening themselves up to the opportunity for other delegates in the committee to ask them questions, and this will be directed by the dais. The third one is to yield to the dais, and this means just to give their time remaining back to the dais. If in the case that the speakers list elapsed, the debate on the agenda item shall be considered finished, and the committee shall move into closing procedures immediately. After several speakers have spoken in the general speakers list, the dais will then open the floor to any points or motions. At this time, the delegates can raise any motions and they'll be accepted one by one, starting from the highest in the order of priority. So to clarify the priority order in motions. Unmoderated caucuses have superseding status over moderated caucuses, and the moderated caucuses are ranked in order of time for each caucus, so the longest being first. The dais will then ask the committee for seconds and objections. If there are seconds and no objections, the motion is accepted immediately without a vote. But in the case that there are objections, the dais will move into a procedural vote with or without speakers. If the motion fails, then it is discarded and the dais will move on to the next superseding motion. And if the motion has failed once, it cannot be raised again. This continues until a motion is passed on the floor and it returns, and if none is passed, then it returns to a speakers list. Now, if a motion does pass, all the motions previously raised are removed from the floor and must be raised anew when the dais next calls for motions again. So there are several types of motions that can be raised by delegates. One of them is a moderated caucus. So this motion is in order at any time when the floor is open and prior to the closure of the debate when the dais asks for any motions. In a moderated caucus, the dais will temporarily depart from the speakers list and call on delegates to speak at the dais' discretion. The delegate making the motion must briefly explain its purpose and specify a time limit for the caucus, not to exceed 20 minutes, and a time limit for the individual speeches itself. So the motion requires a second and will be subject to a procedural vote without any speakers. An example of a moderated caucus motion would be the delegate of Ghana would like to raise the motion for a moderated caucus for 10 minutes total time, 1 minute per speaker on the effects of climate change. Whereas a moderated caucus is being moderated by the dais, an unmoderated caucus is obviously not. It can be raised at any time when the floor is open, when the dais raises for motions, and it can be proposed by the delegate briefly explaining its purpose and specifying an overall time limit for the caucus itself, not exceeding 20 minutes. So another one is a motion for the suspension of the meeting, and this requests the temporary halt of the meeting. It's usually used at the end of a committee session for breaks. So while the floor is open, a delegate can move for suspension of the meeting, specifying just the time for reconvening. The motion itself requires a second, and then it will be subject to procedural vote without any speakers. Another type of motion is the motion for a consultation of the whole. At the discretion of the dais, the delegates may motion for an informal consultation of the entire committee in which the rules of parliamentary procedure is temporarily suspended. In this case, the committee members are the ones who are moderating the discussion. The motion requires a second and a specific time limit and a topic of discussion. The time limit cannot exceed 10 minutes, and then it will be put into a vote in which it needs a 2/3 majority in order to pass. Then there's the motion of adjourning the debate. This is when you would like to adjourn the agenda item that's currently under discussion. If the motion for this adjournment passes, the agenda item is considered dismissed, and all documents on it is tabled, and no further discussion will be taken on the topic itself. So a successful motion for adjournment means that the committee proceeds to the second agenda item under discussion. So in this case, getting rid of topic A and moving on to topic B. A motion for adjournment is in order at any time when the floor is open prior to the closure of debate and the dais asks for motions. So the motion requires a second and will be subject to a procedural vote with speakers. The maximum number of speakers for each side will be set at 2. Another motion to end the discussion of an agenda item is the motion to close the debate. Now, this ends all discussion on the agenda item and it moves into voting procedures of all substantive proposals introduced under the debate. So this is like the draft resolution. Once this motion has been successfully passed, debate has been closed and voting procedures completed. The committee will immediately adopt the second agenda item right after that. So this motion to close the debate requires a second and will be subject to a procedural vote with speakers. And the maximum number of speakers for each side will be 2. The motion for closure of debate will require a 2/3 majority of all members present in the committee. So when the dais opens the floor, they usually ask the questions, is there any points or motions on the floor at this time? When they refer to points, these can refer to 3 types of points in LIMUN. So this is first the point of personal privilege. This is relating to anything that impairs the delegate's ability to fully participate. So either through personal discomfort, as if going to the bathroom, not being able to see something on the screen, feeling too cold in the room, or even the only one that can interrupt a delegate speaking is by having a point of personal privilege indicating that they cannot hear the person speaking because it's too soft. The second is the point of order. This is when the delegate would like to point out an instance in which improper parliamentary procedure has been taken out by the director or by another delegate, but it has slipped the attention of the dais. The third one is the point of parliamentary inquiry. So the delegate may raise this to inquire and ask the dais to any questions regarding the rules of procedure. And in that case, it should be referred back to the LIMUN ROP document that's available on the website. Now, the entire purpose of a Model United Nations conference is to come up with a tangible result, and this comes in the form of working papers and draft resolutions. So, a working paper is a document that is created to assist the committee in the discussion and formulation of resolutions, and they don't have to be in resolution format. Any delegate can propose a working paper for the consideration of the committee by raising it to motion to introduce a working paper. They're not official documents of the committee, but they do require the approval of the dais before a motion to introduce them is submitted. The motion is subjected to a procedural vote without any speakers, and they do not require any signatories of any members of the committee. On the other hand, the draft resolution is a document that is created with the intention of possible amendment and possible vote becoming a full-on resolution for the committee itself. It may be introduced when it has been signed by 1/5 of the number of members, including observers, present at the commencement of the committee session and having received prior approval by the dais. So the constitution of 1/5 should include both the sponsors and the signatories, so all listed in alphabetical order. A delegate counts as a sponsor only if they have authored or helped to write the draft resolution, and sponsors indicate support for the draft resolution, and no draft resolution may include more than 5 sponsors. So, on the other hand, a delegate may be a signatory if they have agreed to sign the draft resolution. Signing such a document does not indicate necessarily full support, but they do have an intention to see that the said document is discussed. So it would be really helpful for delegates to go online and Google Model United Nations draft resolution templates or working papers to just get a feel of how exactly these documents look like before they come in for the conference. After the approval of a draft resolution by the committee dais and it has been made available to the rest of the committee, a sponsor may propose a motion to introduce the draft resolution. So in this case, the sponsor will read out the operative clauses of the motion. And after this, seconds and objections will be heard by the dais, and the motion will then be subject to procedural vote without speakers. Once a draft resolution has been introduced, it will be numbered, and the sponsor may call for a panel of authors. Now, if this is not sought or denied by the dais, or once it has passed, the dais must ask and accept a motion for a moderated caucus of at least 10 minutes to discuss the details of the draft resolution that has been introduced. The first speaker must be a sponsor of the draft resolution. More than one draft resolution may be on the floor at any given time, but only one resolution can be passed by the committee per agenda item. So once a committee has passed one draft resolution, all other draft resolutions will be tabled. So after all draft resolutions have been put to a vote, the committee will move on to discuss the next item on the agenda. So this panel of authors. It refers to the convening of authors of a draft resolution, and it's usually the sponsors, but it's not limited to them. So it's for the purpose of them answering any questions or addressing any of the inquiries that are raised by other delegates in the committee relating to the draft resolution that was introduced, and this may not last for more than 15 minutes. Once an amendment has been accepted, a delegate may raise a motion to introduce the amendment. The delegate will read out the amendment, and after which, if any seconds and objections are existent, then the motion will then be subject to a procedural vote without speakers. Now, delegates should note that the vote on the motion to introduce the amendment is not the same as the vote to whether or not it should be incorporated into a draft resolution. The dais will then establish a supplementary speakers list, and the speakers list will have people arguing both for and against at an equal value. Once the supplementary speakers list on the amendment has been exhausted, the debate on the amendment will automatically close. And when that happens, the committee shall then move on to vote for making the amendment part of the draft resolution, and this is a substantive vote. There are, however, 2 types of amendments. So first, there is the friendly amendments, and this is when an amendment is signed by all sponsors of a draft resolution, and it has also been approved by a dais. It can be introduced as a friendly amendment by one of the sponsors or even any of the delegates, and there can be no objections in introducing this friendly amendment. Thus, it doesn't require a vote to be introduced. On the other hand, there is the unfriendly amendment. So this amendment is termed as unfriendly if the signatories of the said amendment do not consist of the sponsors of the draft resolution. Therefore, it will need to be voted upon to be introduced, and there will be a procedural vote to do that. After the amendment has been presented by one of the sponsors, there shall be speakers for and against, not more than 2 speakers, and then it moves on to a substantive voting. So this video only explores the basic rules that will be faced by the delegates in LIMUN, and only in the more generic committees, not like the specialized committees with their own set of rules. There are more detailed rules and more details to each of these types of rules that I've introduced to you on the Rules of Procedures document on the website for LIMUN. Please do take a look at that document before you come into the conference because it will be extremely helpful in your preparation. Good luck for LIMUN.